Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Laurabai, or Maddie, and today I'm reading chapter 18 of Hashtag Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil. Let's get right into it. Oh, I totally killed someone. Ethan leaned back on his elbows, crossing his legs at the ankles. You did? Dee was so used to inmates professing their innocence, she was shocked to hear Ethan easily cropped to his crime. I snapped that guy's neck. Ethan was utterly nonchalant, like he was describing what he had eaten for breakfast. Just twisted it, and he stuck two fingers in his mouth, jabbed them into the fleshy part of his cheek, and then flung them out, producing a loud popping noise. Dead. You? Better him than me, Ethan said with a shrug. Dude came after me with a freaking switchblade. Yes, he says freaking, not fucking. I think Ethan is is a silly little guy. I like him. Dee couldn't imagine why anyone would want to kill Ethan. Why? He was one of my training clients at the gym. Kept trying to get me to go out with him, but I don't mix business and pleasure, you know? And then he totally lost it when he saw me on a date with this guy, Kristoff. So it was self-defense. Yep, Ethan said with a grin. But the judge disallowed the argument. And now, boom, here I am. Oh my god, Ethan's gay! I should have seen it coming, honestly. I support. I think it's funny because I too am gay. Okay, moving on. Dee wished she could have Ethan's carefree attitude about his current situation, but she didn't. I shouldn't be here, she began, and neither should you. Neither should any of you. Are you so sure we're all innocent, Princess? Griselda half smiled. Are you sure? Are you so sure I didn't slit Julie and Jasper's throats in cold blood? Your boyfriend's name was Jasper? Ethan said with a snort. That always cracks my shit up. Griselda gritted her teeth. He wasn't my boyfriend. She pointed at Dee. Are you so sure that Niles didn't poison his parents with cyanide? Dee's eyes grew wide. They were poisoned? Niles nodded. I found their bodies coiled up on the floor of their hotel room when they came to visit me in Stamford. They must have died in agony. I'm so sorry. Would you two get a room? Griselda said. Cut it out, Gris, Niles said. You told me yourself that you were innocent and I certainly didn't murder my own parents. I'm guessing you all had fast trials like I did, Dee asked. Railroaded through without much of a chance. Due process was a bloody joke. Niles ran his hands through his hair. This is starting to stink of a conspiracy. What kind of conspiracy could there possibly be? Griselda asked. There are plenty of capital crimes every year to keep this place packed to the gills. Yet it's not, is it? Niles said. The barracks could easily hold 5 or 6 times as many as we have now. And isn't it kinda weird, Ethan asked, that so many of us are on the young and hot side? He winked at Griselda, who rolled her eyes and pushed herself to her feet. So what, she said. You realize it doesn't fucking matter, right? Even if she's right, there's nothing we could do about it from here. You're willing to just give up, Dee asked, and die. Don't you want to fight back? Look, Blair showed us this place to give us a chance to survive as long as possible, Griselda said, her pale skin flushed pink. That does not mean taking on the whole Postman Enterprises system. We'll just die faster. You know as well as I do, Niles said, that Blair would have been the first one to fight back if she had the opportunity. Ethan nodded. She told Gucci to fuck off. So baller. Yeah, and now she's fucking dead. Griselda squared her shoulders, staring Dee right in the eye. You got Blair killed, and now you want to do the same for us. No thanks. Aren't you dead anyway? Dee asked. She felt enough guilt over Blair's death without Griselda constantly rubbing it in her face. Besides, for all her tough talk, Griselda was showing a cowardly side. I don't know about you, but I'd rather go out swinging. Dude, Ethan patted Dee on the back. I like your style. His approval just inflamed Griselda's rage. You don't know anything about me, princess. I know that you're a bitch. Niles threw his hands up. Will you two cut it out? This isn't getting us anywhere. He pointed at Ethan. What's our time? Ethan glanced at the massive electric watch on his left wrist. It's been 12 minutes since we crossed the fence. Niles nodded. We need to wrap this up. Why? Cameras tracked us as far as the old water treatment plan. Niles explained. It takes 20 minutes to jog the length of the island and back, so if we're not within camera range by then, someone might notice and send the drones. Oh. So let's get down to it. I appreciate the fact that you're innocent and that you think that by proving your innocence you might be able to get us out of here too. But what exactly do you propose to do about it? Right. Dee probably should have spent her day at ice cream coming up with a plan instead of trying to make small talk with Griselda. I can ask to talk to my dad, she said, sharing the first idea that popped into her head. Tell him about the tweezers. Sure, Griselda said. I'm sure he'll totally believe you. I know he'd listen to me. Do you really? Dee pictured the look on her dad's face during Dr. Farouk's testimony. Would he even believe her? Griselda shook her head. There's no way to get a message off the island, princess. You can't request a meeting while you're on Alcatraz 2.0. We're completely cut off. No phones, no computer access, nothing. That means they had no means whatsoever to contact the outside world. That sounded incredibly dangerous. What if there's an earthquake or something? We'll have the guards up at the station, Ethan said. I guess they're supposed to help in an emergency. An emergency, Griselda said. Good one. The guards. Dee was surprised Niles hadn't thought of them. Maybe one of them could take a message to my dad. Oh, sure, Griselda said. We'll just waltz right up the hill and ring the doorbell. It's impossible to get near the station, Niles explained. And the sentries won't even talk to us. They have a strict no fraternization policy. They're not allowed to make beer, Ethan asked. Niles tilted his head, confused. No? Good, Ethan said, letting out a sigh of relief. That would be weird. What about food deliveries? Dee asked, picturing the tubs of ice cream packed away in the freezer at ice cream. Who makes those? The guards, Griselda said. They come at night in an armored personnel and an armored personnel carrier, but you can't get close enough to spit at them, let alone talk to them. Dee wouldn't have been surprised if Griselda knew that from experience. Besides, Griselda continued, they're not on our side, so even if you could get to them, I seriously doubt they would be willing to take a message to your daddy or your lawyer or anyone else. Niles talks to his lawyers. Ethan was staring off into the tall grass as if contemplating the meaning of life itself. Dee turned to Niles. And you were going to mention that when? I'm only allowed access to my solicitors due to my... This time Dee joined in with Griselda and Ethan. Diplomatic immunity. Niles pursed his lips. But only on the second Wednesday of the month. Dude, Ethan said, snapping out of his deep thoughts. That's in like 2 days. This was perfect. You can get a message out through your lawyers to my dad. Niles bit his lip. I suppose. It won't be easy, though. My meetings are in one of those prisoner communication rooms through a wall of glass. It'll work. Dee wasn't sure how, but she was desperate. Finally, there was a beacon of hope on Alcatraz 2.0. Now we'll have one more challenge, Niles said as they turned to jog back towards the fence. What's that? Dee asked. We have to keep you alive until then. They returned to the gym to change before beginning the trek back to the barracks. Dee was happy to have company, as now more than ever she felt the need to be surrounded by people, which would do her no good when they were all forced to sleep in their own houses at night, but that meant only 8 hours of 24 that she had to fend for herself. The rest of the time she'd have backup. As they headed up Main Street, they stopped at the Bodega, Alcatraz 2.0's convenience/grocery store, which was essentially a 24/7 automated vending machine where you dipped your card into a slot and were debited the amount of the door you opened. Like a high-tech version of the old Depression-era cafeterias Dee had seen in black and white movies. There were 2 employees. The bleach blonde Dee had seen walking to work that morning was taking inventory on a clipboard, and a greasy-haired guy sat behind the counter and flipped through an outdated sports magazine. Dee recognized him right away. It was Rodrigo, the perp who tried to assault her that morning. She froze just inside the door, revulsion washing over her. She remembered the stench of the stench of his breath, the fierce grip with which he held her wrist, and the disturbing desire she had seen in his eyes. She didn't want to be anywhere near this creep, and yet the bodega was the only place to buy prepackaged food for dinner. Rodrigo, Niles said, sweeping up behind Dee. He draped his arm around her shoulders. You remember Dee, yes? I believe you met her this morning. Rodrigo glanced up from his newspaper, and his face slowly turned a sickly shade of yellow. She's our Cinderella survivor, you know, Niles continued, his voice as cheerful as ever. Quite the rage over on the fan forums, I bet. So glad you two are great chums already. Rodrigo swallowed as if forcing down a bit of vomit that had crawled up the back of his throat, then mumbled something about deliveries and hurried through a door into the back room. Niles glanced down at Dee and smiled. There, he shouldn't bother you anymore, I dare say. Niles had inspired irritation, confusion, and fury since Dee had met him. But in that moment, all she felt was gratitude. Thanks. Come on, he guided her towards the refrigerated units. Let's get you some food. She pulled her debit card from the pocket of her jacket. Do you think there's anything on it? I've only been at ice cream for a day. There'll be something, Niles assured her, enough to buy dinner and breakfast. If you find anything decent to eat, Ethan added. What the fuck, Rod? He shouted towards the back room. This place is practically empty. The bleach blonde woman taking inventory shrugged. We were supposed to get a shipment today, but it didn't come. Ethan frowned. I'm going to complain. Right, Griselda said, elbowing past him. I'm sure the postman totally gives a shit that you don't care for his selection of frozen meals. Ethan was right. Most of the little doors in the cafeteria were empty, and she wondered how often food supplies ran low on Alcatraz 2.0. Was that just another ploy by the postman to make their lives more miserable? Were sanctioned murders not getting enough ratings anymore, so he was manufacturing a real-life Hunger Games on the island? Dee hoped not. She wasn't exactly Katniss, and she doubted she'd survive very long if she had to fight for food. For now, she just needed to eat, and since she didn't know how much money was on her card, she decided to start small. A two-pack of frozen bean and cheese burritos, which Ethan referred to as a fart attack. 2 frozen lasagnas, bottled water, a banana, and a package of instant coffee granules. Not the double no foam lattes she loved at home, but it was better than nothing. Dee noticed that Niles, Griselda, and Ethan all carefully examined their packaging before leaving. They checked the plastic wrap and trays for puncture marks and made sure that all safety seals were unbroken. Griselda went so far as to throw out a bottle of orange juice because she thought that the plastic notches that held the unopened cap in place had been severed and resealed. It could never hurt to be extra diligent about food. It was dark by the time they turned off 9th Street and into the barracks. Ethan and Griselda peeled off to their duplex, and Niles paused in front of Dee's building. I'm sorry, by the way, he began, his eyes shifting back and forth as if desperately trying to avoid Dee's face, about all the snogging earlier. Dee fought to keep a blush from creeping up her chest to her face. I know you were just doing it to shut me up. Yes, he said flatly. No. It wasn't entirely clinical. Clinical? Okay. That came out wrong. Did it? Niles sighed. I'm glad you're here. Dee arched an eyebrow. Glad I've been sentenced to death on Alcatraz 2.0? Well, yes, kind of. Now it was Niles' turn to blush. I should stop now. Good night. Niles is so funny. That is the end of chapter 18. Thank you all for listening. And I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.